Okay, so in what felt like the most open football championship in a very long time, suddenly this morning it feels, pretty obvious that Kerry are the best team in the country and by a decent margin as well. And their age profile is very good as well with a view to the next few years. So the final score yesterday, 126 to 19 points. That is the first double digits winning margin in a final since 2007. 39th Senior Men's All-Ireland for Kerry. Our GAA coverage on the podcast, as ever, is with thanks to AIB at the heart of Gaelic games across both club and county. And this year they celebrated a decade of sponsoring the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship. And this championship has been more exciting than many a year. So AIB more excited than ever to bring fans closer to the action. You can check out #TheToughest for more. In a moment, we'll chat with Tomás Ó Sé, Colm Keys, Philly McMahon. First, on the pitch on RTÉ Radio with Adrian Eames was 5-time senior All-Ireland winner as manager Jack O'Connor.
We played well. We felt there was a big performance in us. This was a highly rated Donegal team, but we took the game to them from the off. We got a great start. The boys were very determined leaving the hotel this morning, so absolutely thrilled for everyone. This was a big battle all the year. We battled injuries, we battled adversity, and we stuck together, and great victory.
Does this one mean more than any of the other ones for you on a personal level?
Probably because we were written off for parts of the year and it looked bad for us at stages, but there's great unity in the camp. I'm a long time at it and we might be passing the baton on to someone else, but just thrilled now, thrilled for the boys.
Is that going to be it for you, Jack?
What's that?
Is that going to be it for you as manager?
Well, that was the plan anyway, so we'll see.
So we'll see. Maybe he rode back in that a touch on Sunday evening, but regardless, it's extraordinary. 04, 06, 09, 22, 25, and Jack O'Connor turned 65 in October. Happy to say, Philly McMahon here in studio, Colm Keys here in studio, what I like to call the Donegal group, and then Tomás Ó Sé is with us on the line. You're there, Tomás, how are you?
I'm good, Joe, I'm good.
Philly, a lot of predictions blown to smithereens in that first half.
Yes, we were so wrong.
We're wrong.
We're wearing sackcloth and ashes.
Billy, you're hanging around with those Northerners too much.
Yeah, two boys. You don't need to have Northern blood to be boys against Kerry if you're a dub.
So, what in particular happened that you didn't expect?
Well, do you know what? Walking out of Croke Park yesterday, obviously there's definitely a bias within me, but I kind of just felt disappointed in Donegal's performance, and I felt Kerry were excellent. But then this morning, I looked at some of the figures and the stats, and I said to myself, this is interesting, because they weren't miles away from hitting high standards, right? Because I don't really like talking about stats, particularly on a podcast. Visually, it's better to see what's going on, But when you break down, I have a sheet in front of me, which you know I never have in front of me. I just come in and talk. But there's shots, 34 Kerry, Donegal 28. Shot conversion rate, Kerry 64%, Donegal 67%, right? Frees conceded 12, Kerry 11, Donegal. I won't go through everything, right? Kickouts 115, Kerry, Donegal 11. So kickouts percentage 62% to 65%. Very little difference. Actually, Donegal a little bit higher, right? The big one that stuck out for me, that kind of explains a huge amount of the way most people felt walking out Croke Park, possibly, that it was an anticlimax from the performance of Donegal, was the tackle count. And I know that's hard for some people to understand how important it is. Kerry 87, Donegal 61.
As in number of tackles made.
Number of tackles. Now, you would have said a Northern team would out-tackle any Southern team. That's their bread and butter, go after. And you can break down and look at the variables and go in after all of those things. And then if you look at the scores, the origin of scores, from Kerry's own kickouts, they got 9. And then from Donegal's own kickouts, they got 13. But from the opposition kickouts, right, Kerry got 5 and Donegal got 1. So they didn't do much damage. Donegal didn't do much damage on Kerry. But the key thing, goals and 2 points. That's we'll talk here, I'm sure, about Paudie Clifford's possession count today. But really, if you're looking at this final and saying, if there was a key indicator of the new rules benefiting the team, 2 pointers make a massive difference. Tackles and then they didn't. Donegal didn't punish Kerry on their kickouts.
Great. Loads in that to get to. Donegal, no 2-pointers of their 19 scores. Tomás, give us your big picture. I mean, to be fair, you tipped Kerry, but you felt it'd be razor tight, and it wasn't. So what surprised you about the game?
I just think the manner in which Kerry ripped into Donegal, I think they completely, like we were on RT or whatever, and I thought Kerry were quite relaxed, and then I just thought Donegal were on edge because the boys said that they broke away early straight away after the president marched and did a bit of a warm up, which I didn't pay much attention to, and then they broke early from the march, which I don't have an issue with either. But the lads on RT thought this is psychologically giving them an edge, and I says, how is it psychologically giving them an edge? I don't see any benefit in it. But I was very surprised. I think from the get-go, like you see the throw-in and the two half forwards are sprinting in, but it was Gavin White obviously coming from the half back line, set the scene basically. He did the exact same, creating the point for Sean Shea in the second half. And I just think that they were so aggressive but so accurate in possession. They didn't, like Donegal's big strength, turning ball over, they didn't give them a chance to do it. They were very clever the way they played David Clifford. We said that he'd probably come out a lot more than he has all year. But I think it was just the accuracy of them. And early on, Donegal stayed with it. But then the 2-pointers sucked the energy out of Donegal altogether. I think in midfield, they scrapped for breaks. I think it was 9-2 on breaks at halftime. They were absolutely dogged. Do you know, outside of the new rules, if only for the new rules and the fact that 7-8 point leads aren't much, I thought the game was over after 17-18 minutes, but there was still a fear in me that Donegal would get a big score or a big 2-pointer and get the momentum and get the crowd behind them. It never happened. Never happened. And I think Philly made a good point there in tackles. They were ravenous in getting back into position. If you saw any ball that went wide or dead, they were sprinting back into position to make sure that Donegal couldn't get the run on them and that they were clogged. And then towards the end of the match, I just felt that Donegal were panicked a small bit. And look, they've had a brilliant year. And yesterday morning, we were discussing, and it's unfair. I've seen it, and Philly has seen it on both sides. You talk about players the morning of a match, and the Donegal players in particular, because they lost the match, and they be spoken about in a different way than they're being spoken about now. And that's just the beauty of winning and losing. But they've had a huge season, and that has to be complimented as well. And suddenly Jim McGuinness is gone from a genius to he hasn't a clue what's going on, and that's wrong as well. But you have to say that it was a tactical, like Jack had some year, Joe. You talk about what happened against Meath, and they won't say it out too loud, but it was. And it was, I reckon that the slating from within the county had a huge effect on the players. You heard it in Paudie yesterday. David mentioned it. It does bother them, like it does. But I don't think it was done in any nasty way. It was done because that was the way it was. And they looked at themselves. But Jesus, did they answer it? Like, I didn't expect David Clifford to have a huge game. And he's judged differently. Like, you had Joe O'Connor, Paudie, and probably Gavin White outstanding, and your man is just a level above it altogether. So it was the perfect performance from Kerry, Joe. Yeah.
Darragh Ó Sé, honourable mention as team psychologist, is it?
Well, I think he deserves a spot in the All-Star team.
Colin, where do you want to start there? The two boys have laid it all out really well. What jumped out to you?
I think this is the best Kerry All-Ireland win for maybe close to half a century. I think you have to go back to the 1970s when they stopped Kevin Heffernan Dublin's 3 in a row, and they came with that young team in 1975. So those two All-Ireland titles for Kerry sit together. They've won a lot since, and Tomás's team won many. But I think to have beaten 3 Ulster teams, given the perception around Kerry and Ulster teams, which is a little bit overstated. It's quite a bit at underage level, but this particular Kerry team have beaten a lot of teams from Ulster in recent years. Obviously, they've lost to Tyrone, exited the championship to Tyrone in 21 and Armagh last year. But in the context of everything, to beat them and the way they have beaten them, by the margins and the manner, and especially yesterday, goes right up there for me. And obviously, Tomás might feel about some of his were different, but I think given everything. And 2009 was a great victory as well, because they came and beat Dublin in that quarter-final and were at a pretty low ebb. I would have felt a lower ebb in 2009 when they played Sligo, but and almost lost to them in that game. I think that was way lower than where they were against Meath this year, because that Meath result for me is a little bit, that's overstated too, because Kerry were going to be remaining in the championship anyway. They're going to have a home draw irrespective of the Meath result. They had hammered Meath the year before, so they went in. They were asleep at the wheel for that game, and it suited them almost to have a home game to be able to restack. But I put it down right up there with many of Kerry's best of their 39 All-Ireland titles, because of the manner and the conviction with which they went about it. And obviously the stats will skew it that little bit, but visually what you were looking at yesterday was perfect execution of every plan that they laid out, including the two midfielders sitting under the Sean O'Brien and Mark O'Shea, occupying space, engaging markers in under the Donegal goalmouth for so much of that game. Okay, they'd come out for kickouts, but by and large, when Paudie Clifford and when Gavin White and Mike Breen and Sean O'Shea, that quartet that was across the middle of the pitch, just playing the ball around, waiting to invite Donegal out of their shape. Two midfielders were inside, and they had to be occupied because they can get flicks. Mark O'Shea's very good hands. Yeah. They had to engage them, and it took up two bodies that maybe Donegal were maybe factoring in one being in there, but the two of them were in there.
That's a great point, and there's no doubt that's underestimated a little bit. That kind of pinned Donegal back a touch. You mentioned the Paudie Clifford situation, Philly. I suppose you guys can explain it to me. There was no real pressure, it felt like, on Paudie or on Shawnee. And after what they did against Armagh in particular, that felt just hard to understand. And what that did, to my eye, and so come in, explain to me how you saw it, for David Clifford then, so Brendan McCall's on him. You could use the 2-pointer he got before half-time as an extreme example of this, because, you know, the whole thing just died for several seconds as they waited for the hooter. But akin to, you take a simple soccer analogy. If you're playing a high line as defence, the number one rule is you have to have pressure on the ball. Otherwise, the forwards can time their run and beat the offside trap easily. They can time it perfectly. So to my eye, if you're David Clifford and you're on McCall, and Paudie's under no pressure on the ball, then it's all in David Clifford's hands. He can pretend to go, he can stay. He can jink, he can stay. McCall has to let him go first, because Paudie can play the pass whenever Paudie wants to. Now, if Paudie's under pressure and having to check out and turn around, then David has to time his run beautifully in sync with Paudie. But Paudie's there going, anytime you want, David, you pick your moment. And he gets to skip by Brendan McCall. McCall then has to react, go after him. And like half a metre is all he needs. Paudie gives the pass under no pressure. I don't understand. Okay, maybe at the start it's tricky and you're seeing what they're doing. But once that dynamic started where Paudie and Shawnee were able to pick a pass at will when David just made a jink or someone made a move, the lack of pressure on the ball made no sense to me. None. And it just completely left McCall hanging out to dry, I felt.
Yeah, but there was a variation of the ball he received, David Clifford, because I'm sure he would have realised that he wasn't going to get too much ball inside the full forward line, particularly in the first half. You can see him, he was coming out on the loop.
Yeah.
So I would imagine in his visualisation or his planning for that game was, right, they're gonna have bodies back here. I'm going to get scores more out around the arc, which he did.
Yeah.
And then in the second half, it was mixed up a little bit, where there was that subconscious move where Paudie Clifford's on the ball and he's like delay, bang, he's gone, he's cut inside. If I was being, again, I hate doing this because people go, like, who do you think you are? But like Clifford, how to mark him, if I was pulling apart McCall and how he did, which for anybody it's a difficult job, right? So I have to get that out there first of all. But there's a clip virally going around this morning. He's over the Hogan side first half, and he's his hands on, and he's reaching out with his arm as if to say, "I'm close enough to you," okay? But it's nearly like he's pushing him. He's pushing. So McCall is pushing Clifford. That's what you don't want to do. You don't want to give him separation. You want to be clingy to him, right? You want to know, right? You want to be thinking proactively, what run is he going to make, right? They have the ball right on top of the arc. He's going to run towards the ball. He's not going to run towards the sideline. Worst case scenario, he runs toward. Best case scenario, he runs in towards the full forward line where there's loads of Donegal bodies. Worst case scenario now, he's going to arc around and he's going to get a 2-pointer, right? So you must get sticky tight to him. So putting your hand out and actually pushing him gives him separation.
I think with the new rules and the way kickouts are there and there's no back pass to goalie and teams push up, I think defensively teams will defend differently. And it's back. You look at the way Kerry defended yesterday. They were very, very aggressive. They were man-on-man. They weren't really zone. And somebody there, I saw this morning, zonal defences are gone. I wouldn't totally agree with that either. I think zonal defences can be picked apart, but you have to have a team that can pick them apart like Kerry had. Yesterday morning, I was inside in a hotel and I was chatting away to a fella who would be in the know in Donegal. And just from the way he was talking and all the facts and figures before the game, basically they were worried about Shawnee and David. And in my own head, I turned to my wife after he left and I says, Jesus, they'd make a bad mistake if they don't go after Paudie. But if they go after Paudie, then they're taken away from what they're working at. There was no, I think, one-on-one battles. Kerry, and I made the point last night, have taken on their men. Gavin White did it numerous times. Brian Begley has done it. Joe O'Connor. They put the two men. We discussed putting the two midfielders, Colin mentioned it a while ago, in. They did that, and they still have David doing his magic around the place. But it's the other boys. It's the Brian Begleys, Gavin Whites, Shawnees, Joe O'Connors, Paudies. They're punching and taking on their men. We're seeing that a lot more. It's the first time this year, I think, if you look back over it, the two things that are jumping out at me, Kerry were running at their men, number one, and they won serious amount of breaking balls. But I think the way teams defend, Joe, the sweepers are gone. It's back to one-on-one, even when there's 11 there. And I think nobody, with all due respect to Brendan McCall, and he did well enough at stages yesterday, I don't think there's anybody, when your man is on fire, that can mark him. There isn't. But I think it was a big mistake not putting somebody touch tight. Like Tyrone suddenly matched everything bar David. They had Shawnee and Paudie covered. But there's a no-win situation there because you cover the two boys and David has a lot more space. So I think it's a catch-22 because Kerry just had 3 or 4 fellas that were going to hurt you no matter what. So I think defending has changed.
It boils down to that. There's too many threats.
In that last passage of play before half-time, it runs for about 2 minutes. It starts with a ball that drops short to Shane Ryan. And over the course of that 2 minutes or so, Paudie Clifford has the ball 8 times in his hand. And he's never once under any real pressure. The nearest to him is maybe Shane O'Donnell, a wing forward who, when he comes so far, will engage him a little bit, but nothing. So he has time to look up, head up all the time to see what's on. So I agree with your point that it's not really Brendan McCall. Once the run is made and it's a reverse pass, it's almost impossible to stop once the kick. It's impossible to stop the kick getting away. Obviously, it's a great kick to be able to.
If he doesn't check his run, that ball's not on.
It depends. If he checks his run, maybe it's a free then at that stage. How does he check his run?
If he just puts his body in front of him,
possibly,
Clifford's not making that run.
Possibly it's a free.
But Philly,
the level of concentration that Brendan McCall has to have for that passage of play, it runs for 2 minutes. And that clip, and I did see that clip, and he has a fair degree of concentration on. But Paudie Clifford is standing 8 times. He has the ball. They're playing it around. Donegal know that Hooter time is coming. Why don't they apply a bit of pressure? They know the ball is going to go out of play at some stage. Yeah. So why don't they try in those last few minutes?
Answer that. Those stats show that the longer you keep that ball, and I have to say, Kerry were unreal. That score is an unreal score. The longer you keep the ball against a low block, the lower chance you have of scoring. That's a fact. Right? It's harder when you're on the ball to break the opposition down. That's why the low block is so hard to
I think teams are getting better.
But the stats
I think they're getting a lot better at dealing with the low block. I think there's so much rehearsal in training and everything else, and with better players holding on to it. So I think they were prepared for it. They were used to it, and the low block effectively. Kerry scored that point outside where the low block was with the 2-pointer.
Yeah.
I can't understand that they focused so much on David Clifford. They allowed Brendan McCall to follow him everywhere, but they didn't engage Paudie Clifford. Donegal will always pick up. They'll always man mark probably 2 players right through Ulster and through the round robin. They'll pick up 2 players, and the rest are operating that zonal defence. But because Sean O'Brien and Mark O'Shea sighted themselves so close to goals, and they have that. Mark O'Shea has a great tap, and obviously Sean O'Brien scored a point that way. They were a threat inside that had to be occupied. Yeah. So that caused some complications for Donegal.
Yeah, it's a great move by Kerry. Look, a last word from me in this, because it's not the other aspects of the game to touch on. Philly, I know you're looking at it as a defender, right? And Tomás, come in here, because I know you were trying to look at it from an attacker. Pretend you're David Clifford. Now, if Paudie's under pressure, Shawnee's under pressure, the man in possession of the football, if they are under pressure, the hardest thing for you to do is to judge when to make your move. But if you know that Paudie or man in possession is under no pressure, then you're thinking, I can actually make my move anytime I want. It's too easy. Like, he's going to find a moment where Brendan McCall takes half a step, or he gives him a push, or he goes inside instead of outside. And that means I don't have to worry about Paudie being able to give me the pass at the right time, because Paudie's got all the time in the world. Whereas if Paudie's trying to get around someone or away from someone, you have to be watching Paudie like a hawk and time your run to when he's able to play the pass. You're putting McCall in. It's impossible.
I'm not saying that you don't need to put pressure on the ball going in. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, Donegal set out and said, right, we will look after David Clifford as best we can with a man marker.
Yeah.
And then our structure will combat the rest. That's what they said, right? I haven't looked at Paudie Clifford's possessions, but I would imagine there's a few that are really, really impactful in terms of scoring. The kick pass he hits in the first half across the outside of his foot, completely, Donegal are completely shifted over to that Cusack side. He kicks a ball across. They don't get over quick enough. It's 2-1 to get a score. So there is moments there that pop into my head that go, yeah, they're the times where you need to put pressure more on him. But Kerry footballers are natural, technically good footballers. Anybody could have done that. Well, sorry, not anybody. Most of those boys can play. They're really good technically, right? But if I'm a forward looking in, and Donegal are staying in their structure and are staying narrow, right? Which means McCall stays inside Clifford. The only ball he is getting is going away from the goal. Will he still score? Possibly.
Yeah, sure.
Right? But think of the 2 incidents that we're talking about. The one where he loops before half time, he comes inwards.
Inside, yeah.
Look at the one that we're talking about with Paudie Clifford kicking in. He comes inside him, right? All he had to do was try his best. And I say all he has to. It's a really difficult job. I have to make sure that I don't come across as easy. It's not.
Easy, yeah.
But you got to keep him away from the danger zone, which was him cutting in off his left. Those 2 incidents, they're the same thing.
Yeah.
If you want tomorrow, if you want to change that, all you have to work upon, with your teammates and the structure, is keep Kerry out. Keep them away, because that's the way Donegal defend. They do defend narrow, especially in the low block.
Tomás, give you last word in it, because put it this way then. What do you think when Jim McGuinness is on that long drive home? What do you think he'll feel about how Donegal defended?
Look, I genuinely believe that you're going to have to defend man on man. The top teams playing each other, I think there's no other way, and you're not. Teams have been coached a certain way to coach in numbers, and with the new rules, it's more difficult to do that, especially with teams that have 3 or 4 players. Like, there's no doubt that it worked for Donegal, Joe, for 95% of the teams in the country. They're after getting to an All-Ireland final. They didn't change anything, and that's what's being thrown at Jim McGuinness today, that he didn't change anything. What were they going to do if they haven't played a different way all year? Was he going to go into that dressing room at half-time and say, lads, you know what, forget the zone, just go man on man, do your best, pressure the ball out the field and see what happens? He wasn't. He couldn't back down, and I think that'll be the biggest slant thrown at Jim, is that they were only very one-dimensional in the way that they played. However, Jim could say, Jesus, lads, we're after winning an Ulster Championship, and we're after getting to an All-Ireland final with a team that were in the wilderness until we came back a year ago. So I genuinely believe that they'll have to change the way they defend. And we talk about players way back, Mick Fitz from Dublin, Anthony Lynch. I'm talking way back, Carl Lacey's, Marks, Mike McCarthy's, Tom Sullivan's, man on man in vicious space. And they don't even have the same space as they had years ago. But I don't think there's enough guys comfortable enough doing man marking jobs anymore. And I think it's going to have to come back into fashion fairly lively. And I think you look at, there was no huge science to the way Kerry defended, Joe. They just got man on man, and they tried to cheat across. If the ball was on the left flank, they cheated across on their men, but they always had sight on their men.
Yeah.
So I just think that we're still learning. You have 3 or 4 months of these new rules, and things are popping up. And I think that's an area that Jim McGuinness will have to look at over the winter. Is what they do. There's no way that I would have left Paudie Clifford unmarked before the game, and I know he had whatever amount of touches and the influence. I felt it was a huge game in Paudie Clifford. I think the other fella is unmarkable, David. I think he no matter what you do, but I certainly think it was a huge mistake. I genuinely think that Donegal felt that Paudie was number 3 or 4 in terms of danger. Why else would they not put pressure on him?
Yeah.
No?
I think they regret not putting someone like Finbar Rorty, who's only 19 in his first season, but is well equipped to track a player like Paudie Clifford, or possibly Owen Bangaller, who's coming back into form. So they had possible matches from it. It's not easy defending Paudie Clifford either. I mean, he's wonderful, low centre of gravity. He can beat tackles. He went through 2 late on in the game. Hugh McFadden shrugged off. Paddy McBrearty came in with a challenge, so he can get down low and he can drive and he can get by players, but at least put more pressure on him.
Yeah.
Can I just add something there, right? Yeah. So it does make total sense to Mark O'Shea and the 2 Cliffords. Of course it does. However, the 4 of us are sitting here I played the rules. I don't think the 3 of you have played the rules, right? You mark 3 players out of that, or even 2, right? You mark David Clifford, Paudie Clifford. Let's say, if you're playing this weekend, you say, cut them 2 out. They're key threats. Those 2 run out to the sidelines or run out, and you're 10v10. That is a very hard. Like, you're kind of looking at it and you're going, right, you're weighing up. They killed Donegal regardless, having Paudie Clifford free. David Clifford had bodies around him still getting shots off. And then you say, oh, well, let's change that. Let's do what more so Tyrone done, right? And go a bit more man-to-man on the key threats. And then you're just opened. Like, they were 11v11 and Gavin White is cutting Donegal apart.
Can I suggest a compromise?
Well, what's gone, lads,
is
go on, the safety in numbers. Safety in numbers is gone.
Yeah.
I don't agree with that.
The numbers back is gone, and now all of a sudden there's one-on-ones and we're complaining that you can't defend. That's the way it's going to keep going, lads, because teams are going to get better at it.
You can't, if teams felt that they could go man-to-man, they would have no team went man-to-man this year. None. There was key threats marked, but no team went man-to-man. Most teams...
What did Kerry do yesterday, Philly?
Like, they probably looked like they went man-to-man, Tomás, but they didn't. They defended, they got numbers back. You look at their middle third players. Watch it again. They didn't go man-to-man. They didn't say, oh, well, hold on, Donegal are attacking and there's a few bodies out, we'll stay out here. Look at Cian O'Neill, what he was shouting he was right in front of us when we were sitting down, ourselves and yourselves in terms of RT and BBC. Look what Cian O'Neill was shouting to the middle third players. Get back, get into the low block. That's what he was saying.
Yeah, but
so they
don't get back in. They sprinted back, Philly, and they got back before Donegal. So Donegal might have had 4 or 5. But when the ball got into the Kerry half, it was man on man. They did a clip on
when Donegal attacked. You were saying
they did a piece on it where they defended 4 clips in a row, and Paul Flynn pointed out he actually highlighted man on man, man on man, man on man everywhere.
But the back 6 might have went man to man, but then the players out the pitch, bar the 3 that set up, didn't.
But Philly, if you're waking up in the morning and you see this morning and the game plays out the way it played out, of course you're picking up Paudie Clifford. If you know now what you knew then, and Donegal probably should have legislated for that last week, they'll always pick up 2 players. Obviously, Paudie Clifford is further out from where they picked him up, but they had to make some adjustment there.
Again,
And even in
I
game,
might
they
come
could have
across
made
as stuck here.
even in game they could have made that adjustment.
I would have said that there's a kind of there's a hybrid of that, Colm. I'd say you would be still staying in your defensive structure, considering that they ripped that apart in any way. But I would if it was me, I'd be saying as soon as Paudie Clifford steps into a certain zone, he needs to be tagged.
That's the simple solution.
But that was happening anyway. Yeah, I feel a more invasive type of player was required in his vicinity than maybe Shane O'Donnell, who's a wing forward, a great ball,
then your structure out of place.
ball carrier. But I think a more invasive player was required for Paudie Clifford.
Dropped inside the 45 all year long, and then they picked up the players as they came along. I presume what you're saying, Colm, is that Donegal should have allocated a man and follow him outside the 45 because he's going to do damage outside no matter where he is because he pick off a pass or whatever.
Yeah.
Donegal defended the same way they defended all year. They dropped inside the 45 and picked him up as they came.
So I understand the point. Donegal don't want to change their system they've had all year. That's fine. The exception of David Clifford, if he goes out to the sideline, follow him out to the sideline. He's just worth messing with your system a bit. Paudie, if you don't want to mess with your system, fine. But have a rule that when he gets in a certain area in possession, close him down on him.
Yeah.
If he's on the halfway line, don't come bolting out from your own. You don't mess up your system then. But when he's in that pocket where David could run off him on a loop or there's a kick pass on, at that point where I thought it was so strange for Donegal was they were passive then. It's what are you waiting for? At a certain point you have to engage. They never engage with him. And that would mean you could keep your system intact.
Exactly, yeah. You have a hybrid.
Perfect, yeah.
You put pressure on the key threat.
Huh?
Between the early scores, and we're talking about David and Paudie and they're outstanding.
Yeah.
Sean O'Brien kicked 2 scores in that first half. Dylan Ganey kicked the first score. Gavin White was bombing forward, kicked a couple of scores. So Joe O'Connor was playing outstanding in the middle of the field on top of what David was doing with the 2-pointers. They just got absolutely hammered into the ground in about 20 minutes.
No, it's true. There's a lot of fires to put out, I take your point. That is true. It was a brilliant Kerry performance. We kind of bogged down in the Cliffords a bit because how much possession Paudie had and David was so good. But I totally take the point. Kerry were awesome. Do you think Donegal were flat? Were they lacking in kind of energy?
They certainly didn't have their leaders step up as much. I know Murphy came into the game, but it took him a while. He cuts inside and he hits a score in the first half. That was important to say, here, I'm here, But bar that, Gallen and the 2 O'Donnells were the only one really stepping up. He didn't have that threat as much from the middle third or Morgan coming up. That was it. You could say either maybe they were off it or Kerry eliminated that. Yeah. So that was key. Those people, those leaders, or those key scoring threats were important in the previous games. It just felt, geez. And if you listen to the interviews after the game from the Kerry players, I asked Joe O'Connor, I said to him, what was the major thing from the Meath game that you went after? Oh no, it was Sean Ó Sé, I think it was actually, and he said kickouts.
Kickouts.
He went after the kickouts.
Yeah. Tomás, your read on Donegal and just their energy, and we talked about them as such a great physical team as much as anything. Every manager they've played all year, Ger Brennan used the word repeat sprintability. Everyone's kind of talked about them as physically frightening, and yet you just didn't see it yesterday.
Yeah, I think I'd agree. That you could argue that they possibly had an off day. I think a lot of that is down to the work rate. We mentioned tackles or counts, and I don't think of the half back line, Mike Breen kind of held back inside his own half. I just think they went after Donegal's strengths, Joe. I think they went after Patton in goal. I think the running game, we didn't see Rorty, McHugh, Morgan, Kieran Moore having a huge effect in terms of running. I think they just tackled, harried, and won primary possession around the middle of the pitch. Didn't give ball back in simple turnovers. A huge part of Donegal's game is the turnovers. I just think they ticked the boxes wherever Donegal's strengths was. Murphy struggled to get into the game. He tried to force his way into it, but Jason Foley had a whale of a game on him as well. So I just think that the strengths that they had all year, once they were once they were kind of quelled and matched, and to be fair to Donegal, early on, they were efficient up front, they were kicking scores, but it just went away from them for about 10, 15 minutes. And suddenly you were looking at a 7, 8 point game. And I think that rattled them. I think genuinely it rattled them. I think in the second half, I was fearful of something happening like a goal or something to spark them, and it just never came. They came back to 4 points, and I think that was a strength of Kerry's. Is every time they halted the momentum, they went up. Gavin White got a score, Paudie Clifford got a score. It just was a sucker punch, and they could never rightly get off the ground.
Funny,
And
they kicked some bad wides when they were within 4.
Kerry kicked an awful lot of wasteful. I mean, they went after 2 pointers in the first half, Kerry. So I think both sides, whatever way the numbers are, and I haven't looked at
Yeah,
numbers.
but just
I
it felt
imagine Kerry.
it just felt at a crucial point when they got back
Yeah.
to within 4. I think they
But I
two
think they
bad
were under
wides.
more pressure, Joe, than they've ever been. Look, go back in the kicks. They weren't kicking the way they've done it all year, and they've been brilliant at it, patiently working it over back, players looping. They were under that little bit more heat than they have been all year long.
Yeah.
Probably the loss of Kieran Thompson as a 2-point option
Yeah.
in that second half was a pretty big factor. They also lost Ryan McHugh just after half time, after his collision with Gavin White, who sets up 2 scores off both throw-ins. So those two were a loss coming down the stretch for different reasons. But Donegal, I felt, needed the oxygen of at least, whatever about a goal, they needed the oxygen of a 2-pointer. They just never came. Some of the attempts, Patrick McBrearty was wide. Darrow Boyle, 2-pointer attempt again. There were poor attempts.
Yeah.
And it perhaps drew the life out of Donegal and the crowd. They needed, when they were 4 down or even 5 down, whenever it was, they needed one of them to go over to get the crowd involved, to get themselves. Yeah. And it just ebbed away. But a lot of that was to do with the efficiency of Kerry. While they dropped shots short and maybe that gave ball back to Donegal, very rarely did a Kerry player lose ball in contact. David Clifford lost one. 3 Donegal players got around him. Paul Murphy slipped at one stage. They got a point out of that. Dylan Casey got caught up coming out of defence. Michael Murphy, I think he put that over. Maybe that's the one that was wide. But it was very, very rare when a Kerry player was caught by a Donegal press in any way.
Well, McGuinness was asked afterwards, and the big thing he cited was our turnovers versus their turnovers as the winning of the game and losing of the game.
Don't know what the numbers were, Joe.
I have them here.
From memory.
14-11.
Yeah.
But it feels like it was a much bigger gap than that.
Kerry won 14 turnovers, Donegal won 11.
Right.
So obviously Kerry lost in turnover 11.
I just wonder, were some of those the Kerry shots that dropped short, perhaps that they factored in, because it did feel that the turnovers were very much on those that would maybe prompt a very quick counter attack, which is what Donegal thrive on, and they never really got those opportunities. You know, the way they spread out like ants almost, and they surge up the field like we saw for the goal, Kieran Moore's goal against Meath. They never really got those opportunities to get forward in 3s and 4s, running at pace, to really turn. Yeah, that there's excitement here. Never really happened. They might have got a point or two in the first half from situations like that, but they probably developed them themselves. So they missed those turnovers, they missed the oxygen of those turnovers, and they missed the oxygen of 1 2-pointer even coming down the straight midway through the second half when they did close to 4.
Do you know what was very interesting for me in the mindset of McGuinness, the management team, whatever? They didn't go with McFadden. They went with McGonigal. And for me, that was, we're okay around the middle, but we need to block up at the back. And he came on, you'll see, when Donegal turned the ball over in the Kerry full back line or half back line, McGonigal was going straight back. Right, he was the sweeper. And then McFadden, they're getting dominated in midfield. McFadden comes in and he starts breaking ball on top of O'Connor. They don't get under the breaking ball as much, but I thought that was a mistake.
Okay.
I think they tried to utilise McGonigal as some element of cover for Clifford's side of the field, that he has speed and he can get across and maybe cut out ball without being a second marker or even a sweeper. He can just get across and use his speed, and that was the idea. didn't really work out that way because of the way David Clifford played, almost hanging by the wing. So they almost took out two players in some respects by David Clifford hugging the touchline or the sideline.
Here's a question for you, Roy. Who had a bigger impact? Paudie Clifford or Gavin White?
I think Gavin White, and I think he
Why
marginally...
are we talking about him getting picked up?
Gavin White, he was picked up.
That was the danger, didn't we?
He was picked up, but obviously Kieran Moore had him for a spell.
I thought Kieran Moore hadn't got him. I thought they should have just said to Moore,
I thought Kieran Moore was marking him. That was my impression of it. I suppose he's deeper back as well, and he was timing his runs. But I think only marginally now, I thought more. I would have, go back to not revisiting Paudie Clifford, I would have had a more invasive man marker on him.
Do you want to come in, Tomás?
I think, like Philly makes a point, and it's a good one. Why wasn't Gavin White? We spoke last week about the amount of threats that Donegal have from a running point of view and scoring point of view. But I think you could equally make the argument that Kerry, over the course of the last 3 games, have shown how dangerous they can be, and not just one man. You could easily count out 6, 7 fellas.
It's funny,
Donegal were never going to go after 6 or 7 fellas individually. Like,
before the Armagh game, Tomás, I was just not thinking about a lot of these Kerry players in the same way I am now. It's amazing.
yeah, I think it was forced upon him, Joe. I don't think, like, Sean O'Brien, Mark O'Shea, like, we haven't mentioned Graham Sullivan. Graham Sullivan had a huge game yesterday in terms of his role and his running and his off the ball. He went in with the 2 boys a lot of the time. Sean O'Brien and Mark O'Shea, when they went into the full forward, he went into the middle of it. But I think you lose Paul Ganey, Tom Sullivan, and your 2 midfielders. That's 4 men gone out of the starting team, and I think there was a little bit of panic, and I think that, coupled with what happened above in Meath, Kerry probably panicked at home, and I think it was forced upon him to bring in these players. But you have Evan Looney, who got a pilot game time, Sean O'Brien, Mark O'Shea, Dylan Ganey. They're 3 or 4 players that are well road tested now and will add to the squad and the team next year going forward. And that was probably forced upon them because of injuries and whatnot.
Yeah, they're just so much more a complete team, I think, than I'd realised. Like, just so many brilliant players all the way through. One of the things to get your take on, I don't know how much credence to give this, because maybe if Donegal had won, we'd be praising exactly the same thing that you might be inclined to criticise now. But it's just the stuff pre-game. You mentioned it earlier, Tomás, briefly. Like, is it mind games? Is it antics? It's All-Ireland final day, we're going to dance to our tune and not let the pageantry get into our heads? But ironically, in making such a big thing of it, you are letting the pageantry get to you. Not joining the parade on time. So to be asked twice to join the parade, breaking off in front of the hill. I mean, I'm not pearl clutching or anything, but like the anthem, the lads it's the parade. Like, go around the 4 parts of the ground. The Artane band are playing. Like, just complete the parade. What do you gain by sprinting off? Like, the anthem is still to come. There's a minute's silence still to come. Is it to make Kerry go, what do we do? Like, the way Kerry started the game, it all just suddenly looked a little bit even sillier than I thought. Like, why are you wasting your time?
Through the lens of defeat, something like that can magnify. There's a lot of happy...
I appreciate that.
There's a lot of happy Kerry people this morning that their team respected the tradition of the parade and stayed with it.
Where does it end? We're going to go with the Cusack. Like, just do the parade, you know what I mean?
There's always that little bit of defiance and rage against the world in Donegal life generally, and maybe it manifests from that, and maybe the game had, or maybe the throw-in time had kicked on. It was it 3 or 4 minutes late, the throw-in time?
I think, to be fair, Michael D. Higgins isn't as mobile as he was. That may have added to it. Look,
there's no. I don't see the gain in it. I don't. Maybe someone else's opinion. I don't see the gain in breaking from a parade that's shortened up anyway. They don't go round the whole perimeter of the pitch like they might have.
If they walk down to the Davin stand or something, or just the start of the Cusack stand, and be saying, "Here, this is a bit dodgy. What are you doing?" But it's not that much further to go, to be honest. I think we're making something that it's not.
Well, I'm just asking because people have, one, they've criticised it, but 2, they've said like they got too caught up in all this pre-match stuff.
No, I don't agree with that.
Okay. Tomás?
Yeah, I don't. I have no issue with them breaking above by the hill and shooting off. I'd say plenty of teams, if you look back at it, do it. I think there was no reason why the march, for flip's sake, just go in behind the parade. I think that was stupid to go over.
They also did it in the semi-final and that worked out okay for him. So I'm not sure
Yeah.
that was a factor.
I
It
don't
doesn't
think
look
it's a
great.
huge deal,
It
to
doesn't
be
look
honest.
great for the pageantry of the day, which is
If
a big
it
day.
was,
And
yeah.
it's very much, it's not just Donegal's day, it's the whole country's day, and maybe stay with it for that and don't draw it upon yourself. But I think through the lens of defeat, it will always be looked
Yeah,
at.
I agree. If they win that,
If
no
it
one's
was
talking about it.
planned, you'd say, geez, what's the point, lads? If it was planned from a Donegal, I don't see the point in it, to be quite honest with you, but
It
I
did,
don't
but
think
it
they're
did,
the
it
major.
did, it didn't suggest to you, Tomás, a team kind of ironically swept away a little bit in the occasion, going into all that kind of stuff.
Not really,
Okay.
Joe. I suppose you could make up things that teams have done before, games before, and it's gone the other way. Like, so I don't. If it was devised, I'd be worried. Like, if it was devised to unsettle, I can't see how it would unsettle another team at all. To be quite honest with you,
Yeah. What's Jack O'Connor going to do?
I think he's going to stay on. I think he's put together a management team that have been together 1 year and they're fresh enough, and I'd say they'll be mad for road. I think they've put together a team that are hungry to go for more. I'm not saying they're going to win, but if you look at the way football is being played now, Joe, there's a good chance to go out there. You look at the other teams that are there at the moment, and Kerry are as well equipped as anybody else, and the age profile of the main fellas would lead you to say there's more in them. So I'd say that he's retired. What else is he going to do? Is he going to go off golfing? I don't think so. I think I think the chairman of the county board said it already today that he's hopeful that Jack will remain, and he wouldn't be saying that unless he had a good gist. So I would say that the same crew will be involved again next year.
Okay.
Tomás, you remember 2006, Jack did 3 years, won the All-Ireland, got out, and the following year, the basis of that team went and defended, put back-to-back titles. The last time Kerry did it, I'd say Jack, maybe Pat O'Shea picked it up and he oversaw that All-Ireland win. So I'd say Jack might have regretted getting out too soon, and I think he'll take the lessons of that for himself. And I agree, he will be manager. It's a new team. Cian O'Neill has come in and obviously done a great job with them, as well as Aidan McGarrett and others. I don't think Jack will be in the hurry to get out that he seemed to be straight after the game yesterday. I think there's a good chance that they could defend their title next year, just as they did in 2007. Obviously a lot harder to do it now than then, but I think he will be round.
It's funny, he was talking post-match about like the last training session Thursday and his wife getting a photo of him leaving and like, we'll frame this, and it's like I can't get a read on what he's going to do.
It's also hard to believe, Tomás, that last year, by all accounts, and no firm evidence of this, there was a struggle to get a backroom team together for Jack to stay on. That was that was relevant. I don't think he'll have any problem if he's trying to make an addition now.
I think worth mentioning is, again, I was sitting in the first row of seats right in front of Jack O'Connor and Cian O'Neill. And Tomás, you might be able to speak better on this, but what I found fascinating was I'm not sure if Jack O'Connor was making the subs, because I'll tell you why. Jack O'Connor was kind of a little bit down towards the hill 16, where he'd stand on the sideline of the pitch, and O'Neill was probably up more towards the middle of the pitch. And O'Neill had the earpiece in, and Micheál Burns was on the sideline, and he was warming up for about 15 minutes. And I looked at Oisin McConville and I said, "Are you going to bring this lad on?" They've brought on 2 or 3 subs before him. And I looked, and me and Oisin were going, that is terrible. Like this. Now, again, in that moment, you got to do what's going to be best for your team. They brought a couple of defenders on maybe before him. But I remember going, there was no conversation there between those two who the next sub was. It was Cian O'Neill on the radio, looks up behind and he says, right, calls Weber down, and he goes on. And I remember Burns going to Jack O'Connor, and Jack O'Connor putting his hands out as if to say, I'm not sure what's going on here. Like, It was very interesting. Now, I'm only assuming, but then Burns comes on, and I was actually pleased for him to come on, because I've been in those positions where I'm like, will you get me on the pitch here? I'm ready to go.
We had a discussion last week about maybe Jack needing this All-Ireland more than Jim McGuinness. But his legacy was secured anyway. But this is really enshrined at 5 All-Ireland titles now.
It sounds good.
When you think of it, he's only 3 off Mick O'Dwyer, who by and large won them with the same team. Maybe changes into the 80s. There were some significant changes. But Jack has probably done it with 2 teams and maybe a third team too, in three different areas. Certainly 2, 2.5, but maybe 3 different teams that he's regenerated. So it's quite the managerial feat.
Well, sure, if not, look, Tomás will step in and it'll be all right and they'll kick on.
I think they're okay, Joe. I think they're okay.
Give us a quick word before we go. Kerry next year, given the age profile, we've had this really open championship all year. God, so hard to call. And suddenly this morning it feels like, Jesus, Kerry, of course. How could we look past them? So what do you expect from Kerry next year? And actually Donegal as well, like a crushing blow. Big part of McGuinness's kind of stature is like they've such belief in him, and whatever Jim says we believe in, and Jim has the game plan. Like it's a serious body blow to him and Donegal and what they've kind of created up there.
Yeah, I think Kerry will probably, like Paul Ganey, Tig Morley are probably the 2 lads that are elder statesmen or whatever, 34, 35, and they'll probably look at it. Paul Murphy's been around a good while as well. But I think in the players that they've unearthed this year and the injured players that they had who will be hungry to come back into it as well, I don't see a huge turnover. And it wouldn't surprise me if they kept everybody, to be quite honest with you. I think towards the end of this, they have a completely stronger squad than they had at the start of the season. So I don't see huge turnover, Joe, to be quite honest with you. And a fella said to me, they have young fellas to come through from the 20 team as well, which they'll blood. And I think there'll be more emphasis on trying them in the league as well. And a fella says to me, with all our issues with Aussies, he says, that'll keep the fuckers at home now. It is the one thing is success. So I hope we had a few fellas outside in Australia who'd want to come
They need to come and offer Clifford.
I have to say, Tomás, I don't know how Joe O'Connor escaped the clutches of the AFL scouts that are.
He's been huge, lads. On any other year, he'd be player of the season, and it would have to take something special. And Clifford obviously has done that, and he will get player of the year. But Joe O'Connor would be my second closely. I thought he was outstanding. Like the goal below in Paudie Clifford, he has had big moments throughout the year. And Kerry, with their plan yesterday from Shane Ryan, the 2 midfielders, it was always down on top of Joe O'Connor's head. And Christ, he competed well. Yeah.
Maybe the injuries might have just...
It'd be interesting. I'd be more interested with what will happen up in Donegal. Because Mark McHugh was on the Sunday game last night, and he made the point that financially, they pumped everything into this year. Everything. And it's so deflating for them. They've had an outstanding couple of seasons and 2 Ulster titles, but you could sense from McGuinness that it was an All-Ireland or nothing. And it worked the last time, and it hasn't worked this time. So what will happen to Murphy? What will happen to Jim? Will they drive at it again and try to come at it from a different angle? So I'd imagine there's more interesting questions to be answered from a Donegal point of view than a Kerry point of view, because they have a lot of young players coming as well, and they have a good team to go again. But this will be some blow to them.
What's your gut in Donegal, Philly, next year?
Pain is can give you the biggest motivation. And as much as I said 2 years ago when Armagh got beaten in the Ulster Final, these boys will be back, and they won the All-Ireland that year. Nothing got to do with my predictions, by the way, but they did. This is probably a crap analogy, but the worst time to try catch a crocodile is when it's hungry. The best time is when it's fed, and that's why it's so hard to do back-to-back All-Irelands, regardless of how talented your group is. So for me, I believe Kerry will be strong again next year. I think Dublin will get a bounce from a new manager in, but will they be strong enough? I don't know. I think Ulster's going to be strong again next year. I think Tyrone are going to build on this year. I think Armagh are going to build on this year, and I think Donegal are going to realise that stats-wise they underperformed, but they're still not miles away from it.
Yeah. Okay. Should David Clifford have got man of the match yesterday? Is there
White for me, to be honest.
Gavin White for me too. Yeah.
I'm just wondering, does Clifford starting like -5 points in the man of the match stakes? He's like a plus five golfer or something.
Can I tell you why White? I'll tell you why. Sorry, Thomas. I'll tell you why, because I'm apparently the worst fella for picking man of the matches in BBC.
Right.
but I think a man in a match for me, right? The criteria is man of the match should be the entirety of the game, right? So when you look at Clifford, as amazing as he is, and how he kind of completely blows up the game at times, that he gets scores and goals. When you cut clips down, let's say of Gavin White or David Clifford, you'd see that David Clifford has brilliance in moments of the game, a lot of moments of the game, by the way. But it's a lot less time than it would be of a Gavin White who you'd clip and you'd have about 4 or 5 minutes of impact in the game. So that's where I come from when you're picking a man in a match. A man in a match is not like the shortest amount of time. If that's the case, then a player comes off the bench and he scores unbelievable scores. Should he get that? Nobody really gets man in a match off the bench. So for me, that's just the way I would pick it.
It's an interesting one.
He hasn't been man of the match in any of the three games.
Screwed. I think there's a bias against him, and also I think we underestimate. Imagine being man-marked the way he's been man-marked. You know, what he's doing is so much more difficult than what White had to do. Sorry, Tomás.
Yeah, I think he's just judged differently and way differently to everybody else. I think he could arguably get man of the match in every game. Sean O'Shea got it against Armagh, Joe O'Connor got it against Tyrone, and you could have picked Clifford out. The amount of people that have come to me and verbally abused me for losing bets, like, shocking.
Well, I guess, look, footballer of the year, never man of the match. Maybe that tells its own tale. Is there anything major we've forgotten there? No? That's it. Kerry, our best team in the land. Philly, thanks a mil. Great to have you in. Colm Keys, brilliant stuff. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Tomás, same old story. Kerry?
Jeez, I don't know about same old story. It isn't as if they're flying in the door, but yeah, brilliant year for them, and they turned it around when I think Jack said it. It was the sweetest one of all, and I think the supporters have really kind of bought into that as well. So Tralee and Killarney to be avoided tonight if you're looking for a quiet night.
Very good. Okay, fellas, thanks so much.